So I'll share a little bit of the behind the scenes stuff. Some of the I guess it's the secret stuff that clergy see that not everybody sees. This isn't being broadcast over the internet, is it? Just you and me here. That's what. Some of the secret stuff. So there's the ending in this week's Torah portion. Everyone looks primarily at the beautiful reunification of Jacob and his boy, and then with his grandsons, and the blessing he gives to his grandsons, and the blessing he gives to his boys. The Hadassah Hospital, it's got the 12 windows. It's all based on this section right here. The blessing that Jacob gave to his sons, the 12 tribes. But the end of this book, the very last part, there's some fascinating stuff. Jacob wants his bones to be buried, and they do a big deal about the processional, and Pharaoh says absolutely, and it's like such a regal procession that they do. It's funny that there's no words that are said. We don't have any record of what was said at the funeral, but he was buried there, and they came back, and then the brothers feel guilty. Remember the ones that sold Joseph into slavery? And they're thinking, ay, Dad protected me. Dad protected us. Dad's not here anymore. What's going to happen to me? The things that I did, and now look at him. He's the right-hand man to Pharaoh here. Oh, yeah, what's going to happen? And so they concocted a lie. They concocted something totally false. And they said, and our rabbis talk about this, and they say that sometimes for the sake of peace, you can tell a lie based on this. That's what it's interesting. Only for the sake of peace. And so the brothers go to Joseph and they say, Dad wanted you to know this. He told us this. He says it's real important that you hear. Well, we don't have any record of it being written down. We have a lot of things that Dad said, and Dad did not say this. Dad, it's important that we tell you this. It's important that we tell you that don't be so hard on your brothers, even though they did a really horrible thing. So we did this really, really, really horrible thing. You shouldn't be so mad at us, and Dad says you should forgive us. That's what Dad said. And they kind of repeat it and kind of stutter a little bit while they're saying it. It's kind of choppy the way that because you know that they're sort of making it up on the spot and they're nervous. That's the way the Torah communicates things. And Joseph, their brother, what does he do when he hears their brothers? He just starts to cry. He just starts to cry. And you can only imagine. He says, look, they're my family. I love them. I forgive them. God was with me. I know that they did this to send me ahead, to save life for those 7 bad years, the 7 famine years. It's okay, you're my family. I'm so happy to be with you. It wasn't you that sold me. It was part of God's plan. And he's just crying because his brothers can't see that. And then in the ending of the story here, that even in the finest movie you've ever seen, it's not quite as good an ending as this. He says, I will protect you. I will make sure that you've got enough to eat and your kids have enough to eat. I will make sure of it. And I'm the right-hand man to Pharaoh. Don't worry. And then it talks about the remainder of his life, and it's in such beautiful terms. He got to see his children's children, and even his great-grandchildren grew up on his knee. Isn't that a wonderful expression? He saw his great-grandchildren on his knee. I mean, it's like, oh, we're getting such a close, intimate view as to Joseph, this man of God, who's protecting everybody. The protector in this dangerous, dangerous place, Egypt. And then he says, I'm about to die. Make sure my bones go to Israel. And he dies. And his bones are in a box in Egypt. The great protector is in a box. His bones are in a box in Egypt. His last request hasn't been fulfilled. I mean, don't you smell a sequel coming on? Don't you just know that there's you know, the next major movie blockbuster is coming out. I want to focus on this part in the death. I don't know. I want to tell you about some things that a couple of people confuse. I'm going to start with a wedding. A wedding can be a lovely, lovely ceremony, but people confuse it with something else. In a wedding ceremony, my goal as officiant, as a rabbi, is to take the bride and the groom, and yes, there's rejoicing, but the biggest deal is to point them into the right direction and to hitch them on to something bigger than themselves that they can work towards to help to stay together for a long time, that there's work involved. People confuse that, and at weddings, what sometimes people do is they say, what a perfect couple this one is and that one is. They're so perfect for each other. They're just made for each other. Isn't it lovely? And we're here, and that's it. As if it's done and there's no more work to do. The time that you say wonderful things about people is the essence of what a funeral is. Because you don't, after a funeral, there's no work in their life. And people confuse those two things. I want to point out that there are some big differences between weddings and funerals, but also there's incredible similarities. Incredible similarities. I guess the best way I can describe some of this is, now you wouldn't think it, a wedding so happy, 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 and a funeral so sad, 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 but there's a lot of similarities. I don't know if any of you have ever gone skiing, but I used to go skiing as a kid. And one thing I learned when you're skiing, you got these long skis that you're on, these long sticks of wood, right? And they're on the ground, and it's kind of hard to turn a long thing. But if you ever get on a bump, if there's a bump like this, a big bump, then you're on top of it. Your skis only touch the ground in one place, and it's really easy to turn this way or really easy to turn that way. They're not like plastered to the ground. They're only on the ground underneath you. And so an interesting thing about skiing is if you hit a bump, you can change directions pretty easily. And that's a lesson that I apply to weddings and funerals. Weddings and funerals are big bumps in life. And all kinds of things happen. But they are amazing opportunities for changing the direction of your life, that your life is moving in. Both of them are similar in that most of the people in the world who care most about you all come out for it. You get to see, when was the last time you saw your second cousins? You know? Your cousin's kids, when was the last time you saw them? And, Oh, Aunt Minnie, look at her. Can you imagine? I never thought she'd make it. And here, look at this. Right? I mean, these are some of the biggest things about weddings and funerals and such like that. And look what happens in this story. Dad dies, and all the brothers are really scared. They're really, really scared. And there's like, their emotions are right on the surface. And they're going to deal with stuff. They're on this bump, and it can turn and change. And they need to get a reassurance from their brother Joseph, the one who made it big, that he's going to protect them. And they kind of put together this thing, this fabrication. Well, as a rabbi at a funeral, from a rabbi's point of view, it's not so much about what you say. It's about how you handle the family and how you guide the family and how you bring them to holiness. That's a big part of it. And so some of the most important part of the most important things I do as a rabbi at a funeral is be with the family before the funeral. No rush whatsoever, and just listen. And just see how they relate to one another, and see what issues are unresolved in the family, and how some people can forgive one another. And be aware of that, because that's an opportunity for doing it. Just like in this story, it talks about it. That's one thing that I look for in a funeral. And I don't try to guide the bride and groom into a direction that they should move in, but I say, we are here to make the memory of Grandma Tilly a blessing. And so how are we going to remember her? How is our life going to be changed because Grandma Tilly lived? And I say interesting things. You know, it's a lot of people view the words that are said at a funeral by the rabbi or the clergy as though it's the report card on the person's life. That's a lot of, you get pretty nervous if you think of it from that point. And I try to say things that help people remember. I'm going to say Aunt Tilly. Does anyone really have an Aunt Tilly? Well, you do. You're the only one with an Aunt Tilly? But you do too, huh? Well, I'm not talking about her. But you get the idea. My goal is to make that person remembered and to make everyone else's life that's there better. And to make everyone feel like they were in the exact right place and it was really worth it for them to schlep all the way over here. And to have their eyes open for holiness and to listen to stories and to patch relationships and how to forge new directions in your life at that time. And so interesting things like, I've seen things, I've said, if I say a sentence like, Aunt Tilly, she didn't really walk through life. She danced. If it is anything true to the life that she lived, whenever people remember Aunt Tilly, they will say that line. My Aunt Tilly really danced. And so I try to find a line or two like that that matches what the people are saying and include it in to give people something to hold on to that they can just, oh yeah, Aunt Tilly dancing, yes. That's it. There's a lot that goes on in them. There's a lot that goes on in the words from the pulpit, but especially in like the pews and how the people interact in that shiva. And I tell people this is a sad time, but keep your eyes open because there's a lot of holiness. There's a lot of holiness. And the fascinating thing about a funeral that many people don't know is that funerals don't end when everybody leaves. They sort of linger for a long time. And the epilogue to the funeral is little Johnny's bar mitzvah 9 months later. Little Johnny's having a bar mitzvah. And everyone's flying to Chicago for Johnny's bar mitzvah. And it's the same people interacting again. And at Johnny's bar mitzvah you say, and just like Aunt Tilly would have done, we're going to dance when the Torah comes out. And it's a bar mitzvah, but it's really Aunt Tilly's funeral. It's the epilogue to Aunt Tilly's funeral. As a clergy, you see the relationship between them. They're really all linked. All family events like that are really deeply linked. And that's kind of a little secret from behind the scenes. And I wanted you to see that funerals don't always end sad, that they're related. I tell you that because maybe sometimes you'll have the opportunity to help out with a marriage or help out with a funeral or a bar mitzvah, but to maybe expand and look and to see what's going on and how it's going on and what's happening from all the different perspectives. And I think that this week's Torah portion sheds some real light on reality of family dynamics. With that, I'm going to share a couple of things about what's coming up in the future. In the future. Sign up for the Shema tour. We, on Monday, have to pick what size bus we're getting. Are we getting a 40-person bus, or are we getting a 55-person bus? We've already got 26 people signed up. Look, I get it. Every year people sign up at the last minute. But this year, Laura Saul is working on this. Got that? We want to keep her happy. Got that? Not only that, but we're going to be guests at the Hebrew Center, and they're putting on a luncheon in our honor. And so it's good to know how many people are going to be there. This is a lovely day, a lovely, lovely day that is a really important part of being a member of Temple Beth Hillel. We're going to see 3 different places where the needy go to get their needs met. We're going to see an amazing little gem, a church about half the size of this room, where you wouldn't believe all the amazing things that happen out of it. We're going to go see Rabbi Alan Lefkowitz and the work that he does at the Hebrew Home in Hoffman Summerwood and treat it to lunch. And then we're going to see a place where dogs and cats can go if they're lucky, if they don't have a home to go to otherwise. It'll be a lovely, lovely day. It's free. It's Martin Luther King Day. 9 o'clock here, 3 o'clock. How many of you haven't signed up yet but are thinking, ooh, that would be a nice thing to do? That'll help us. Right, raise your hand up high so that we can see about how many people to get on this bus. All right, and you're welcome to bring friends. All right, so we're getting a little bit of an idea here. Sign them up on Martin Luther King Day. You can bring kids. It's really geared towards adults and children to like junior high age, but you can bring little kids if you want to. They will love it. I'm just not gearing everything towards little kids. I'm gearing it towards adults. That's on Monday the 20th. There is also a few sisterhood events. This Wednesday there's breakfast at Vernon Diner at 9:30, and then a week afterwards there's a Chinese dinner at Temple. You can talk to Marcia about that. And then movie night, that's not till February 9th. With that,